On this exciting episode, a famous painting by Henry Matisse is missing. Oh, you know, that famous one from his middle period? Come on, the famed middle period of famous artiste Henri Matisse? I don't have to tell you what that means, do I? Let's just say this sordid tale of painting pilfering involves divorce, masquerading cherubs, and a record player belting out some nameless jazz combo. Sounds about right. It's Perry Mason, Season 3, Episode 20, The Case of the Crying Cherub. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose here, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do an episode of every episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll get to some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Each episode, I'll give you a brief refresher on the plot. I'll compare the episode with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel it was adapted from, if applicable. Next, I'll list some key pieces of trivia before I tackle the episode's theme. We'll feature a Perry Proverb, a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, before heading to the post-case water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library! Each episode in the Law Library, we investigate some legal conundrum in the episode so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. In this visit to the Law Library, we deal with civil suits and slander. Perry has two clients, June Sinclair, Dave Lambert. The mother of June's boss accuses the pair of having made off with a $200,000 painting by Henri Matisse. Charge his clients with a crime, and Perry don't play.
I've no wish for a discussion, Mrs. Harkins, but I must tell you this. If you persist in your accusations against Miss Sinclair and Mr. Lambert, there will be a discussion, and in court. I'm sure you'll find the position of defendant in a slander suit extremely uncomfortable.
I can't remember Perry ever threatening a civil lawsuit before. Typically, he only deals in criminal laws. We're already in rare territory. Let's go through the legal taxonomy here. Defamation is the blanket term for what we're discussing. It covers slander, which is verbal defamation, and libel, which is written defamation. Here are the things you can say about someone that will set you up for a slander suit. 1, you can say the person committed a crime. Ding, ding, ding. You can say the person has a loathsome, contagious disease. You can injure the respect that people have for a person's work. And 4, you can claim the person isn't chaste. Now, to convict somebody of slander, you need to prove the person you're suing said this injurious thing to a third party, said something that was false, said something that was unprivileged, that is, it is not somehow protected speech, and prove that it caused real damage. And it goes without saying, you have to show the defendant was negligent in spreading this rumor. Mrs. Harkins, keep on barking, and you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of Perry. We'd love to see him get a conviction. Now, let's get to the plot of this episode. The Case of the Crying Cherub. The Harkins Gallery has a new Matisse, but art critic Sylvester Roby, great name, suspects foul play.
I can't believe it. I simply can't believe it. It's just not possible.
I'd be most happy, Mr. Harkins, if you'd secure another opinion.
Oh, I'm not doubting you. I know your reputation. I can see it myself now. The brushstrokes, the patina.
And thus, we're introduced to June Sinclair and her absolutely hapless boss, Richard Harkins.
But surely the picture's insured.
For $100,000.
Oh? I read somewhere that you paid £1 million for it, which is over $200,000.
I was supposed to increase the policy, and I forgot. Oh, my mother will kill me, absolutely kill me.
Battle Axe Mama Harkins is upset and immediately assumes June and her guy pal Dave Lambert are responsible for the crime. They didn't do it, but Dave's getting the crunch from his separated wife, Liza. Man, this gal's a piece of work, a painter too, just like Dave.
But surely the picture's insured.
For $100,000.
Oh? I read somewhere that you paid £1 million for it, which is over $200,000.
I was supposed to increase the policy, and I forgot. Oh, my mother will kill me, absolutely kill me.
June and Dave enlist Perry to help their cause. Well, actually, they enlist Della in their cause. This is a weird intro. If you know, you know.
But surely the picture's insured.
For $100,000.
Oh? I read somewhere that you paid £1 million for it, which is over $200,000.
I was supposed to increase the policy, and I forgot. Oh, my mother will kill me, absolutely kill me.
Perry goes right to work and tells Mama Harkins what's what. Mama Harkins, on the other hand, is making side deals with Liza.
You and June and that husband of yours are all in this together.
Possibly. But you'll never force him to give the picture back. Dave's stubborn.
We'll see.
Yes? Wait till tonight. When he doesn't appear, contact me. If you're willing to accept my terms. The money must be in cash.
June has had enough of Liza's manipulations and her generic jazz combo music. They duke it out, but Liza gives more than June can take. Out she goes, but before she departs, someone gives Liza what she has coming. Uh-oh, run, June, run! Perry goes in to pick up the pieces and finds Tragg and Lambert. Perry doesn't have to tell Lambert twice what the proper response is to police questioning.
No statement. No statement. No statement.
While the Harkins are destroying evidence and Paul is canvassing security guards, Perry's getting prepped for a new opponent in the courtroom. This was the first episode after the William Tallman debacle. So we've got a new credit sequence, just 3 names after we see Raymond Burr, and no shots of anyone but Burr from the starring cast. In the courtroom itself, we've got David Lewis portraying Deputy DA Mark Hansen. We get a kind of opening statement from the guy and a revelation that he deals in art crime a lot.
Your Honor, the defense is aware that the deputy prosecutor is an authority on art, and he's welcome to delve where he desires.
I dig this idea that you have all these deputy DAs who are specialists just ready to get called in on crimes that fit their particular bailiwick, you know, kind of like the appraisers on the Antiques Roadshow, the sports memorabilia guru, the early American furniture expert, the poster specialist. The next big break in the case comes when Perry discovers that Liza Carson's work is up for option under the curation of Sylvester Roby. There's one special painting in the bunch.
Hardly seems the kind of thing Mrs. Harkins would be interested in buying. The smiling cherub.
They aren't all smiling.
What do you mean?
Well, 3 of them are, but one of them's crying.
Perry goes hard after it, wins it, and then reveals why in court.
I'd like to know what kind of demonstration counsel's planning here, Your Honor.
This relates to the artistic phase of the case referred to by the prosecution itself.
If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Hansen, you were the one originally who wanted to delve into the artistic aspect of this case.
A water-based paint, Your Honor, that washes away completely.
The missing Matisse.
That's right, the missing Matisse.
And Roby knew, but that means the murderer was a security guard?
But that night when she was talking to Miss Sinclair in the studio, I searched the bedroom and found the 5,000. I was on my way out when she came in with that toy pistol of hers, and she was going to shoot me. When I took it away, I shot her.
Perry, Paul, and Della delight in a classic visual art gag in our denouement. Perry got himself a portrait made.
No, my fee really came from David Lambert. Just arrived. A portrait of me. It's an abstract, of course, but I think the likeness is excellent.
I'm having a freak out up to 10 years later. Tom Wiltshire notes, a magnifying glass, law books on a shelf, and a client trapped in a maze at lower left as the spokes on the wheel of justice keep on turning, end quote. Pretty good eyesight, Tom. Ride a painted pony and let those spinning wheels of justice turn. Della and Perry really sell the joke by switching the painting's orientation from portrait to landscape and back again. Bad art, good times. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. A Della is something about a particular actor or actress in the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. We've got 3 Pauls for this episode. Number 1, do Matisse paintings get copied? If so, when and how? 2, what's the real LA equivalent of this Harkins gallery? You figure there's got to be one of these smaller joints with good pieces like the one in this episode. Is this a Getty Museum takeoff? Would people have watched this episode in LA in 1960 and thought, that's a TV version of X gallery? And number 3, what's the price on a middle period Matisse these days? $200,000 in 1960. What about in the year of our Lord, 2022? Our Della for this episode concerns Tom Drake, a.k.a. Richard Harkins.
My mother regards me as a vegetable that somehow has learned how to talk.
Here's 10 about Tom. 1, he was born Alfred Alderdice in 1918 in Brooklyn, New York. He attended a local Catholic prep school in New Rochelle, then graduated from a prep school in Pennsylvania. Number 2, got his first Broadway role at age 14 in a play called June Night. Number 3, 1940 gave him his first film role. He was one of Gary Cooper's kids in the film The Howards of Virginia. Number 4, his most famous film role as the wholesome and handsome boy next door opposite Judy Garland in 1944's Meet Me in St. Louis. He had a similar role in 1946's The Green Years, also a big hit. In 1948, he starred opposite Mickey Rooney in Words and Music, where he portrayed young composer Richard Rodgers. Number 5, in the midst of all this success, Harkins was only married once to Isabel Dunn. They married in 1945, divorced in 1946. No kids. Number 6, in the 1950s, Drake started appearing on TV, trying to distance himself from his good boy image. He was still getting roles for 20-year-olds in his 30s. His numerous appearances included Lassie, Cimarron City, and 77 Sunset Strip, among others. Number 7, we've seen him on Perry before. He was Squaresville Central resident Cleve Niles in the case of the Jaded Joker. Number 8, in 1960, the same year as the case of the Crying Cherub, Drake had an acclaimed death scene opposite Richard Burton in the film The Bramble Bush. Drake's character is suffering from a terminal illness. Burton is Drake's best friend, but he's falling in love with Drake's wife. Drake here asks Burton to put him out of his misery.
In the
true sense. We love each other as brother loves brother.
Yeah, in the true sense.
And you want to help me, but you know, there's nothing you can do. Nothing anyone can do. Except keep me in comas for days, weeks, maybe months. Die. You saved me once, save me again. Oh, make it be over. Do it.
You can find that full film on YouTube. Drake also appeared with Burton in the film The Sandpiper. His last film appearance came in 1974's The Spectre of Edgar Allan Poe. Number 9, thanks to a movie magazine from 1952, we know that Tom Drake supported Democrat presidential hopeful Adlai Stevenson. And number 10, Drake died of lung cancer in 1982, only 64 years old. He was survived by one sister. Our Perry for this episode involves our intrepid hero's art knowledge. When Dave Lambert comes into the office, he says he's met Perry before. And in fact, Perry's bought one of his paintings. He doesn't expect Perry to remember. Oh, but how you underestimate our intrepid hero, Dave.
You don't know me, Mr. Mason, but you bought one of my paintings a couple of years ago. Kids and Pigeons on the steps of the Palace of Justice in Paris.
Of course I remember you. You're David Lambert.
To which we say no statement at all. Our theme for this episode, moms. Mrs. Harkins, played ably here by Catherine Gibney, is a classic Perry helicopter mom, a variation on the controlling father from episodes like The Case of Paul Drake's Dilemma, or a direct analog for the mom in The Case of the Dangerous Dowager. Let's discuss the recipe. 1, take one parent with money. Then 2, sprinkle said parent generously with 2 contradictory and spicy impulses. A, to preserve cash for the next generation. B, endlessly ridicule that next generation for being unable to handle said cash. 3, have that parent batter a child endlessly until broken down. This recipe produces at least one heartbroken or dead child. Serve cold. Well, this story has a happy ending at least. Amelia Harkins' redemption has arrived. Though it's not on screen, it's in the denouement where we get Mama Moneybags coming out to play.
You make a fresh start, all right. She turned $1 million over to him. She also gave a very nice wedding present to June and Dave.
Oh, she was just in a giving mood, Perry. Don't forget she also paid your fee.
I thought for sure Richard Harkins was going to be the murderer the first time I saw the episode. Classic coddled son who only finds a way to act out on his own by getting violent. Thank goodness that wasn't the case here. Take the money and run, June and Dave. And you be a better mom to your kids. You hear, June? Now, let's hear a Perry Proverb. Might as well stick with Richard Harkins, who, all things considered, competes for the episode's most compelling character. Note this odd moment of candor with Mason and the classic proverb it provokes from our hero.
What is it that puts a man out of step with the people around him?
Perhaps he hears a different music, Mr. Harkins.
True, Perry, true. Let's just hope it's not the Kyle Mombi we heard blaring in Liza's apartment. Now, let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
You know, there is one thing I don't understand. Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we take a look at deleted scenes, the sequences that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Loyal listener Tom Wiltshire throws his 2 cents in. Number 1, the mysterious woman artist who appears sprinkled throughout the show becomes the prison pen pal of genius Aaron Hubble from The Case of the Purple Woman. They copy each other's portraits on visiting day at San Quentin. Yes, Tom, crossover. Number 2, a new denouement features Perry walking into the office where the woman artist is seated at her easel copying the fish painting behind Perry's desk. Perry says nothing, goes about his work as if she isn't even there, and then she turns to smile knowingly at the camera. And scene. Love it, Tom. Here are my three. Number one, we get a look at Dave Lambert Gallery. All he produces are those caricatures you can buy at amusement parks, big heads, little bodies, stylized beyond belief. The one of Paul in a fedora with a gigantic magnifying glass, that's my keeper. Number two, Perry and Della have a heart-to-heart about the whole attractive client thing. They go through every case they've had together and determine their types, so there's a standard moving forward. Who do you think they propose? I'll leave that one to you, the listeners at home, but if we're just talking about the episodes themselves, rather than anything we know about Raymond Burr or Barbara Hale off-screen, my guess is Perry puts forth Lois Fenton from the case of the Fan Dancer's Horse, and Della mentions Brander Harris from the case of the fraudulent photo. Number three, Hamilton Berger keeps trying to come into the courtroom and take the case over from Mark Hansen. The judge holds him in contempt. I have nothing but contempt for this court, Berger shouts as he's carried away. Our Paul from the last episode, we asked the question, what is a uranium mine actually worth? Well, here's the thing. Uranium, it's everywhere. And it's not plain uranium that people want or need. It's enriched uranium. So you need a lot of it, and you have to have a partner. In June 2017, uranium was about $1.64 for a troy ounce, and gold was $1,260 for a troy ounce. Troy ounce, I may not be saying that correctly. That's the word I found. It's the metric used to measure precious metals. You'll learn something every day. So at that point, gold was 768 times more expensive than uranium. Still, I found an article from the, wait for it, Canadian Mining Journal, yep, that exists, listing the top 10 richest ore mines in the world. And at the top of the list, a uranium mine in Cigar Lake, Canada, worth nearly $4.5 billion. I'll include a link to that article in the show notes. The gist for Gerald and Sally? Uranium mine's better than nothing. They won't have to be eating beans and cornbread every night if they don't want to. Now it's time for some listener letters. Trivia maven Nancy writes in to point out that named him after a man of the cloth Amos Catledge portrayer George Mitchell was married to fellow Perry Mason guest star Catherine Squire for 32 years. And we'll see the first of Squire's 3 appearances in the case of the Credulous Quarry next season. Great eye, Nancy. Thanks. Don't call him Jaded Joker. Tim Cree writes in to point out that Perry Mason is a really bad show to be a night watchman, guard, delivery man, etc. on. He asks, what's the hit percentage on the killer being someone who is seemingly in the background? If I was in this world and a murder was committed in the building where I worked, I'd quit immediately and leave the state just to be on the safe side. Too true, Tim. Tom Wiltshire writes in, the Crying Cherub is hanging behind Mrs. Harkins in the Roby Gallery as she threatens Roby and offers $25,000 for the return of her Matisse. In the background, her son fingers the paint and suspects the Matisse is hiding in plain sight, but says nothing to his crab of a mother. Perhaps this suggests a podcast theme of looking but not seeing the truth. Good thought, Tom. I'll keep that in mind as we move forward. We also heard from Nancy about her experience watching the show with her grandparents in the 1970s. She writes, I have strong memories of watching the show in reruns at my grandparents' house in the Adirondacks in the early 70s. They lived in a very rural area. And therefore had cable way before we did. So way up in little Constableville, New York, they got WPIX from NYC. And when I was visiting, I was thrilled to be able to watch Perry, which wasn't on in my city. I was always enthralled for an hour and so sad when the ending theme music came on. Love it, Nancy. Thanks for sharing. We also heard from listener Carolyn Day. She writes, quote, running between planes, but heard your specific call out looking to know that there's more than 40 people listening. I'm here and I love the pod. Thank you so much for the time and care you give these characters. No, thank you, Carolyn. Or Caroline, not sure. And you made my day with that note. Traveling mercies. As always, I'd love feedback about this particular episode or the podcast in general. Was there something about this episode that you'd like to comment on or something you'd like to correct? Just want to say hello, maybe. You can reach me at theperrypod@gmail.com. I dusted off the old Perry Pod website this week. That's theperrypod.com. I started writing posts about the case of the sordid suspects for season 1. You may recall that at the end of season 2, I ranked every defendant from worst to first. Well, for season 1, I made a bracket of season 1's defendants, and I'll be having head-to-head matchups writing about them until I determine a winner. The first one I wrote up, Nora Mae Quincy from the Case of the Fiery Fingers versus Anna Hauser from the Case of the Substitute Face. Lenore Shanewise versus Lorraine Tuttle. 2 grand dames duking it out with all the fake jewelry and tears they have to spare. The winner gets $25. That's a lot of money, says Nora Mae, but it's worth it. Look for more regular posts there in the coming weeks. In our next episode, it's Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick. Which nephew's a murderer? Take your pick. It's the Case of the Nimble Nephew. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue.